Who the hell are you?
You know. You all know exactly who I am. Say my name.
You what? I don't have a damn clue who the hell you are.
Yeah, you do. I'm the cook.
Bullshit.
You sure?
Keir Starmer is the latest political leader to be Andrew Marred when asked if it was transphobic to say that only women have a cervix. Starmer responded by saying that it is something that should not be said. It is not right. Starmer's interview came a week after Ed Davey, leader of the Liberal Democrats, was also unable to answer what is wrong with the phrase woman, adult human female. This was in light of Natalie Bird being barred from running for office under the Lib Dem banner after a complaint was made about her wearing a t-shirt with the phrase on it. It is unknown at time of recording if Boris Johnson is able to define the term woman, although one would hope he could after fathering 6 children with a 7th on the way. In Starmer's interview, he gives 2 main points with regard to his position on trans rights. Firstly, that it is not necessary to bind the definition of woman to having a cervix, and secondly, that trans people are one of the most marginalized groups in society. In this video, I will be tackling the first element of Starmer's position about biological sex, and its relation to being a man or a woman. I will discuss the idea that trans women are one of the most marginalized groups in society separately, as I think it merits its own video. So, why is it important that we have a definition of woman that is grounded in biology? Well, just in case you are new to the gender-critical versus trans ideology debate, let's look at the 2 definitions of woman. Historically, we have understood woman and female to essentially mean the same thing, but they are not interchangeable. We understand female to be a somewhat cold, scientific term, whilst woman is the fleshed-out social experience of what it is to be female. Both woman and female have been traditionally understood to be inextricably linked to sex, whereas gender ideology would define gender and sex as separate, gender being the expression of one's true self. This definition of gender means someone born male can identify as a woman on feeling alone. It is not necessary to make changes to their male sex body to be considered a woman. When Starmer says that it is not right to say that only women have cervixes, it follows that his belief is that men also have cervixes. Just to further reiterate the same point, it similarly means that some women have penises. Saying that a woman can have both sex-based organs is a denial of material reality and has implications for the hard-won sex-based rights which women currently have. The right to female-only prisons, changing rooms, rape crisis centers, and from being able to organize around women-specific concerns. There are also social implications. For example, there are areas of society where women are currently underrepresented. I briefly worked in the tech project management sector, which is a male-dominated world. It's also a sector where trans women are overrepresented. If there is a software development department filled with only trans women and men, have you really solved the underlying issue of why women are not applying for or getting the same roles? In reality, you essentially have a department of people who only have the male experience, or the male interpretation of the female experience. Another example of trans women standing in as a diversity boost in place of biological women is actually here on YouTube. BreadTube, the left-leaning side of YouTube, where you will find creators putting across their thoughts on issues via the socialist gaze, and has long been criticized for being too white and too male. I was recommended this video by Noah Sampson, a practical guide to leftist YouTube. Of the 29 content creators mentioned, 18 were male, 6 were trans women, 3 were female, and 2 were trans men. You could argue that this is such a small space, and in the grand scheme of life, I would agree. But it just shows how insidious the trans movement is, and how little a woman's perspective is valued, even in a progressive space. Gender-critical people will often state that the inclusion of trans women means the erasure of women and their experiences. When I was a trans rights advocate, I would mentally roll my eyes at such a sentiment. It sounds so grandiose and self-indulgent. But more and more, we are seeing the abdication of women's issues in favor of pandering to trans inclusion, without question in progressive spaces. The erasure of not just women's spaces, but experiences, is a very real thing. I have seen many people who only have a surface level of understanding about the debate state that trans rights advocates are not denying their sex or fundamental biology. Unfortunately, this is not the case. In the wake of Starmer's comments, the hashtag #OnlyWomenHaveCervixes was trending on UK Twitter, and trans rights advocates were lining up to state that they were not just women, but for all intents and purposes, female as well. If being transgender is about identifying as a different gender other than the one assigned at birth, how is it transphobic to say that only women have cervixes and trans women have penises? What it boils down to is that trans rights advocates understand that sex actually does matter, and they need to claim the identity of woman, but also female as well. It's not just about someone who is born male being more comfortable presenting as a woman. It's about completely eroding our current understanding of womanhood and the safeguards that our society currently enforces. We have same-sex spaces because as a society we understand that through both nature and nurture, men and women are different. Men are stronger, on average taller, have penises, a higher sex drive, and are more likely to have a paraphilia, a propensity for certain health problems. The list goes on. Female spaces are necessary, not because all men are rapists, but because we recognize that men commit the overwhelming majority of sexual assaults. The three main components in crime are means, motivation, and opportunity. We want to take the opportunity element out of the equation. If you believe that trans women are women, you have to also believe that women have penises, and women must expect to see penises in their same-sex spaces. This flies in the face of decades of safeguarding and minimizing risk to women. If I am in a changing room and I see a male-bodied person with a penis, am I just meant to stand there and accept that this person is actually a woman? My instinctual reaction would be to run, or make a scene. I do not think that we should dull women's and children's boundaries when it comes to being uncomfortable. I often hear the argument, men who force themselves into women's spaces, such as toilets, to rape women, are going to do this regardless. They are not going to go to all the trouble of being trans. I used to think this too, before I had looked into the trans discourse and listened to trans people describe what it means to be a woman. Suffice to say, I had vastly underestimated the male ego and socialized male entitlement. If you go into online trans spaces or read what celebrated trans authors such as Andrea Long Chu say about what it means to be trans, and by that extension a woman, you will come away with a better understanding of the male ego. In the instance of Chu, when talking about their experience of being a woman, they state that getting fucked makes you female, because fucked is what female is. The well-worn joke men would make about actually being a lesbian trapped in a male body has become reality. Men are not just identifying as women, but as lesbians, transbians. Again, disavowing the prime tenet of being lesbian, same-sex attraction. It is actually listening to trans women that cemented my position that one cannot self-ordain oneself as a woman, and they will go to great lengths to access female-only spaces. Why it's so disappointing that two leaders of three major parties have a backwards position on women's rights is because of the implications for policy. I know it's a bit idealist of me, but I want my politicians to make policy decisions that are evidence-based rather than identity-based. Listening to them talk on the matter, it is clear that they are not well versed in the counter-arguments to trans ideology. Even right now, crimes are being recorded by a person's preferred gender rather than sex. There is a petition for this to be changed, and I will link it down below. We know from historical studies that trans women keep their male pattern of criminality. It doesn't drop to biological female levels, even when they have sex reassignment surgery. Women's rights organizations have done the painstaking work of going through each prosecution and identifying a person's sex and working out the associated crime statistics. This is something that our government should be doing. Even the dry rational area of statistics has been skewed by crimes being recorded by gender. Just as an aside, I'm based in Scotland, where self-IDing as trans could become a reality soon, and I cannot find any data on crimes by sex. I've been able to find the data in England and Wales, but not Scotland. Anyone could help me out and can find any, let me know. But when it comes down to gender and politics, if you do not have the language to name a problem, then how can you attempt to fix it? If you are forced to partake in someone's perceived reality and disregard real material problems, then you are not going to provide meaningful help. By considering the proposition that men have cervixes as a philosophical thought experiment rather than a denial of material reality, you do a disservice to basic women's rights. Seeing both Ed Davey's and Keir Starmer's responses made me think about the relationship between men and social justice movements. I will preface this section by saying that I believe men can be feminists and have just as much emotional capacity as women, and it would be sexist to say otherwise. More than ever, women are aware of the nice guy. The nice guy archetype is a man who knows exactly what to say to appear as if he is thoughtful, kind, and caring. But his motivation for acting this way is solely to get closer to women and satisfy his own needs. This kind of guy will parrot social justice talking points because he knows that's what he needs to do. Being a proponent of trans rights is the ultimate signifier that you are a progressive, understanding person. It also has the added benefit that you can mercilessly beat down those bigoted women who are just wanting a discussion about what it means to be woman. The trans rights discourse is a misogynist's wet dream. There is another side to this. There are men who genuinely care about women who are afraid to put a foot wrong in the debate because, as a white man, they are the lowest on the identity politics social justice ladder. If they do voice their opinion on the issue, they will be tarred with the irrelevance of being a white, heteronormative, privileged man who has no right to talk about this struggle. They will either sit silent or emptily parrot trans rights mantras, only having a surface-level knowledge about the debate. Even though this issue affects everyone, these men will view it as not their fight to fight. It is solely for women and trans women. I think there is a mix of these two elements in Starmer's and Davey's position. It's a distinct brand of casual lead-headed misogyny cloaked in progressive pandering and righteousness. Ultimately, it's disappointing, but there are those who are unafraid and have based their opposition in understanding, not bigotry, as trans rights activists would have you believe. When it comes to Labour and the Liberal Democrats, these are the people that I want to vote for, but I now feel that I am unable to. Not just because of the disregard for women's rights, but because of how they have come to this conclusion. It's an unthinking, blasé ignorance, which I find to be the most unforgivable of all. Well, that's my take on everything. Please let me know what you thought. And if you didn't agree, let me know why. Or regardless, just let me know your thoughts. I love reading the comments, like they're really cool. And place your bets now on whether Boris Johnson knows what cervix is. Until next time, I don't know. Fuck.